The last episode explained how John D. Rockefeller built Standard Oil into a multi-million-dollar business by perfecting the oil refinery process. But that doesn't mean he had a monopoly on selling oil products. In fact, he had over 200 competitors across the country trying to do the same thing. So in this episode, let us learn how Rockefeller used underhanded tactics to squash all the competition and lay the foundation for one of the largest monopolies in history. Chapter 3. The Ambitious Mr. Rockefeller. After making millions from his first partnership with Morris Clark, Rockefeller was ready to build something even bigger. And he knew exactly who he wanted to partner with. Henry Flagler was a wealthy businessman from Michigan who owned several oil refineries and pipelines. But what really caught Rockefeller's eye was Flagler's new philosophy. Business is war. You have to be aggressive and exploit every advantage if you want to win. And Rockefeller loved competition, or at least he pretended to. In reality, Rockefeller was already hatching a plan to destroy all of his competitors and take over the market. But first, he needed money. He offered Flagler a deal. Put all their resources together and form a new company called Standard Oil. But there was a catch. Standard Oil would be run by Rockefeller, which didn't bother Flagler at all, because he was too busy traveling around the world. Yeah, seriously. That guy just left his multi-million-dollar business to a complete stranger. Turns out he had a sick obsession with trains and decided to travel to Asia to find the largest train he could. Anyways, Rockefeller took charge of the new company and immediately got to work. He combined Flagler's oil pipelines with his own refinery and created an integrated system that stretched from the oil fields of western Pennsylvania to the East Coast. This gave Standard Oil an unprecedented cost advantage. See, back then, oil refineries were still using old-fashioned cast-iron pipes to transport their oil. But Rockefeller recently invented a new system using steel pipes with special valves to regulate the flow of oil. This made transporting oil much easier and cheaper. But it also meant that Rockefeller had full control over the supply. If he wanted to cut off a rival or force them to pay higher prices, he could simply turn a valve and stop the flow. At first, Rockefeller wasn't interested in cutting prices. He just wanted to expand Standard Oil across the United States. To do that, he needed the help of the railroads. But when he approached the executives, they all gave him the same answer. They weren't interested in transporting oil. See, oil was such a messy substance that it ruined the reputation of any railroad that dared to transport it. Also, the oil executives often fought each other while loading and unloading oil, which put the railroad workers in danger. But Rockefeller didn't care about any of that. He was desperate to grow, and he was willing to do whatever it took. And that's when he hatched his secret plan. Rockefeller went to each railroad executive and offered them a generous rebate if they agreed to transport Standard Oil exclusively. In exchange, he promised to give them a discount on all the oil they needed. It was an amazing deal, but it was only good for a few years. Then after that, the railroads would have to pay full price like everybody else. At first, the railroads weren't so sure, but once they heard about the rebates, they couldn't refuse. Soon enough, all the major railroads in the country were signed on to Rockefeller's secret plan. And now he had the perfect weapon to crush the competition. See, before this, oil refineries had to pay the same price for transportation no matter where they shipped to. But now, Rockefeller could simply refuse to ship to certain cities, which would force his rivals to raise prices if they wanted to serve those customers. And that's exactly what happened. His competitors tried to keep up, but it was impossible. Rockefeller undercut them on every front. He lowered prices to record lows and made deep discounts to big customers. He basically launched a pricing war, and most of his competitors couldn't keep up. One by one, they lost money, tanked in the stock market, and were eventually forced to sell their companies to Standard Oil. Within a few years, Rockefeller expanded Standard Oil nationwide and laid the foundation for a nationwide monopoly. Chapter 4. The Ruthless Mr. Rockefeller, but he wasn't done yet. Not even close. After decimating the competition, Rockefeller set his sights on an even bigger prize: total domination. But to do that, he needed the public on his side. And that's when he made his biggest mistake. You see, while eliminating his competition, Rockefeller was busy signing secret contracts with the nation's railroads. And soon enough, the public found out. The New York Times published an detailing all of Rockefeller's shady dealings. Everybody was outraged. How could he make these secret deals behind everyone's backs? But before Rockefeller could respond, another bomb dropped. It turned out that two of Rockefeller's biggest suppliers were secretly funneling money to Standard Oil through hidden drawbacks, which are essentially secret discounts. Naturally, the public was furious. They started boycotting Standard Oil products and rioting broke out in several cities. But it was all just a part of Rockefeller's plan. He wanted the public to hate him, so that way he could get rid of the remaining competition without any pushback. He bought out all the pipelines in the Midwest and the South and used them to ship oil to his refineries along the East Coast. Then he offered the pipeline's owners generous positions within Standard Oil, but they refused. Instead, they took their lucrative pipelines and sold them to a new company called the South Improvement Company. This was a brilliant move. By selling the pipelines instead of giving them away, they could collect dividends without having to work. But here's the thing. The South Improvement Company was nothing more than a shell corporation. It was secretly owned by the same railroads that had given Rockefeller secret rebates. This is why the public didn't find out until years later. The railroads had cleverly hidden the connection between the two companies. And since the public hated Rockefeller so much, they didn't even try to investigate. So in the meantime, Rockefeller continued expanding his empire across the United States. He bought out refineries in Ohio and western Pennsylvania and forced the rest to go out of business. Meanwhile, the public grew tired of the riots and stopped protesting. So Rockefeller finally lifted the lid and revealed the truth. Sure enough, the public was furious, but not at Rockefeller. They were mad at the railroads for ripping them off. Suddenly, Rockefeller became the hero. He pledged to reform the industry and bring prices down. The public ate it up, and Standard Oil sales skyrocketed. But behind the scenes, Rockefeller was panicking. The South Improvement Company was on the verge of collapsing, and he had to do something fast. With the South Improvement Company about to collapse, Rockefeller hatched a desperate plan. He secretly met with the railroad executives and threatened to reveal their secret deal with the public unless they paid him $1 million. And to ensure that they paid, he blackmailed the railroad executives with evidence of their corrupt practices. The executives had no choice but to agree. Soon enough, Rockefeller was swimming in cash. Now he could buy out all the pipelines in the country and build an impenetrable network. But before that, he had to get rid of one last obstacle. 24 refineries in Cleveland, Ohio were still standing in the way of Rockefeller's nationwide monopoly. He had to do something fast because the longer he waited, the more likely they were to strike back. So he came up with a diabolical plan. He offered to buy out all 26 refineries for a fair price and invited them to a secret meeting to discuss the details. But once they arrived, he locked them inside and threatened to release poisonous gas into the building. Only 2 of them refused the offer and fled the building. In the end, Rockefeller bought out 22 of the 26 refineries and crushed the last of his competition. From there, Rockefeller's dominance spread like wildfire. Within 10 years, Standard Oil controlled 90% of the U.S. oil market, and Rockefeller became the richest man in the world. But don't worry, in the next episode, we'll explain how his greedy ways led to the downfall of his entire empire. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out the next one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.